Hey guys, welcome to this pre-recorded episode of Screen Junkies Universe. Right now, Lon Harris and myself are both away celebrating the holidays, and spoiler alert, it probably looks exactly like this.
Yeah, I'm definitely not doing anything more exciting than what you see me doing right now.
Nope, just in the chair with this idiot staring out a window. Happy holidays, Lon.
2020. This is as good as it gets. This is what we're doing.
So here's what we're doing. Here's what we're doing today, folks. There's a lot of we're giving you a utility today out of the kindness of our own hearts. There's a lot of streaming services out there. Who's got time for them all? I sure don't. But we wanted to take three of the, like lower tier, we'll call them.
How dare you, Joe? How dare you?
I don't know.
Dare you speak of Peacock that way?
The kind that the downstairs people in Downton Abbey watch. And basically, I kind of want to hit these line, from the premise of like, okay, I just got my 7-day trial. Mm-hmm. Like, what do I need to check out? Because Lon Harris, you're the professor. You're a binge boy.
I'm one half of the binge boys. That's true.
I feel like which you should, by the way, as a podcast that everyone should be subscribing to and rating and reviewing. Let me jump into this with one half of the binge boys. I thought that you would just be a great resource for sort of like navigating.
Go on
through some of these.
Yeah, I mean, I write a newsletter about streaming TV. I do the show with Hal. Like, I'm constantly checking out new things. I don't necessarily watch them all the way through. Like, I'm very good about, I'm going to give this like a good 2-3 episodes, see if it grabs me, and then stay or move on with my life. That's the only way to do it. Otherwise, you immediately fall behind.
No, you're good. That's the test. So today we're gonna talk a little Peacock. We're gonna talk a little Apple TV. We're gonna talk a little Hulu. So let's start with Peacock, man. I've just started my plan that's paid because I don't want commercials.
You're paying for the no ads.
Yeah, I'm paying for no ads, maybe. So what shows are gonna make Peacock with no ads worth it for me? What would you recommend people get into?
I mean, in terms of new original Peacock shows like made just for Peacock, there's really not that much. So far, NBC Universal is bringing in a lot of like UK content to Peacock, like that Brave New World show with Alden Ehrenreich that they debuted. There's one that's actually pretty funny called Intelligence, where David Schwimmer plays this like arrogant, dopey American who goes over to like liaise with the British surveillance and intelligence community, and it's kind of like a funny government workplace comedy thing. But that's really mostly what's on Peacock. The one like Peacock original series made for them that I would really recommend is this new Saved by the Bell. And nobody is more surprised to hear me say that than me, because I'm not a fan. Like, I, like everybody else my age, watched Saved by the Bell when it was first on. But even in its own era, I was like, this show's bad. Like, it was just like on. I don't know why I ever really watched it, because I never liked it even in its era. So it's just one of those things that's in my brain. But the new one gets that and makes it like work. You know what it really reminds me of? And I was saying this to Nick Mundy the other day. It reminds me of those 90s Brady Bunch movies. Do you remember those?
Oh, okay. Yeah, totally gotcha. Yeah, I know exactly.
Where it's like they're doing the Brady Bunch. It's not a Brady Bunch movie. Like, they're taking the characters and they're making a movie out of including references and stuff to the old episodes. It's very faithful, but it's also like a world that's aware that the Brady Bunch is weird. Like, they're in a modern context where nobody acts like characters on the Brady Bunch, and they're an anomaly. And like, that's kind of, they're not doing exactly structurally the same thing with Saved by the Bell, but it's like, it's Saved by the Bell in a world that gets how crazy Saved by the Bell is. And it's like self-aware in that way that the original show was not.
And I love the meta of that in a way where it's like, just sort of, I don't know, and this might be missing the mark totally, but almost sort of exploring that idea of like listening to other people's weird old high school stories. And you're kind of like, what? And how important those still are to them, and how like nonsensical and bizarre and outdated even they might sound is kind of fun.
It is. It's a little bit like hearing about Saved by the Bell via like a game of telephone. Like it's still Saved by the Bell, but in this morphed way. And even like the performances, like obviously we get like Mario Lopez back, Elizabeth Berkley, and they're sort of riffing on their old bits and characters. But we've got this younger cast, and they're not, the original Saved by the Bell cast, and not to knock them as performers. Oh, I have no problem. Well, Mario Lopez seems like, but I know I'm not here to call out Mark Paul Gosselaar, but let's
not cancel the Colonel, the KFC Colonel right now. That's not up to us.
Please. Right. The sensual KFC Colonel. But like, it was very like young people stagey acting in the original. Like it's all done with like a wink to the audience, and like it's very over the top and sitcom-y. And now we've got again this like younger cast. It's like good actors, and they're more in their characters, and it's less winking and obvious and laugh tracky, and it works pretty well. Also, John Michael Higgins from the Christopher Guest movies is like the new Mr. Belding, which was which is
great.
Good choice.
Yeah.
Well. Yeah. Who doesn't like that guy? Like that was a really like surprising delight from Peacock. Like it feels like they're, with this being their first big original American thing they're launching, like it feels like a good sign. Like they got this one right.
All right, well, we got Saved by the Bell, which I agree with you. When I started hearing everyone lose their minds and kind of go, because I had completely dismissed it when it got announced. It was like, whatever.
Yeah, like who cares, right?
And then when people were really responding positively, I started to look into it more and more. The creative team's really good. The writers are really funny. I think
the first good sign was the guy who did Zach Morris's Trash, whose name I'm blanking on, but the guy who did that show, that digital show, he's like a writer on the new show, and it's like, yes, it's like a generation of people who grew up on Saved by the Bell but are like savvy enough to break it apart and like comment on it while doing it instead of just doing it, which would have been like unbearable.
It's a deconstruction. It's the Watchmen of Saved by the Bell.
Right. Well, you wouldn't want just like a new Saved by the Bell, because that would be that thing of people remember it fondly, but if you go back and watch it, it's bad. So if you were doing it faithfully, you would be making a new bad show like that old bad show.
Right. It's weird that it worked for Full House, but I don't think it would work for something like Saved by the Bell.
Did it work for Full House, Joe?
I mean, not for my taste, but like I don't know.
Exactly. Like I probably would have liked Fuller House if they went in with this approach, but they didn't. Sure. They were just like new Full House.
Yep. It just same as the old house.
Right.
So
meet the new house.
Recommendation 1, a surprising one, but a strong one, I think. That's maybe 2 days out of my 7-day lonely holiday binge.
I've got some more stuff to watch. It's just not originals.
No, that's fine. What else should I be checking?
I really one thing that I saw on Peacock that I was very excited for more people to get a chance to see was The Fall. Have you ever heard of it's not a well-known. This was an Irish show from like the early part of the teens. And it's got Gillian Anderson and Jamie Dornan. Best known as Christian Grey to Americans. And it is it's like a really creepy take on like a crime drama, and you're following. She's a detective who's searching for a serial killer, and he's the serial killer who's like living this normal double life. And we're just following both of them in tandem for multiple seasons, like waiting for them to be drawn closer and closer together. Really well acted, really just an odd show. And it's another like great binge. Like it's like a few seasons you could just dive in. And now the whole thing is up on Peacock. So highly recommended over there.
Right on. And okay, cool. Yeah, we got it. We got a comedy, we got a crime drama. Of course, you can just crank through old episodes of SNL if you want.
I mean, Columbo and Murder, She Wrote are both up there in their entirety. You could do a lot worse.
I mean, you and I are trying real hard to just not make this a Columbo-centric episode.
We could just talk about my favorite episodes of Columbo. For sure.
I think that's our podcast, My Favorite Columbo.
My favorite Columbos.
It'll be like,
honestly, this isn't. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, it'll be like Gilmore Girls, but you just walk me through Columbo.
Right. And it's called Just One More Thing Because then that's like, and then the episode's like never, like we start wrapping up like halfway through the episode, but then we keep like, you know what? Just one more plug. Like that. So that's our Columbo podcast.
Well, what's our third Peacock recommendation to really round out this the 7-day trial for folks?
I did want to talk about there are a bunch of documentaries. They've got access to like the NBC Universal archives. So there's lots of like it's a little bit like there are whole sections of Peacock that are a little bit like going to Beverly Hills to the Museum of TV and Radio. And there's just like, oh, here's an exhibit about this interesting trend from 50s television. Because like that's kind of what they're doing with this whole archive of content. The best one that I've seen so far is a documentary. I did not even know that this ever happened. It's called The Sit-In, and it is about a week of The Tonight Show, and Johnny Carson went on vacation, and he brought in Harry Belafonte as his guest host. And Harry Belafonte was just like, I'm going to not just be like a guest host and do the show for Johnny, but like make it my own. So he had like Martin Luther King as a guest and like James Baldwin as a guest and like Muhammad Ali and like crazy celebrities, but mixed in with the usual Tonight Show guests. And and so, there's not a ton of clips that survive, because one of the things that's interesting about the documentary is how much old TV footage is just lost. Like there's tons of NBC content that aired in like the 50s and 60s that we just don't have. It's just gone forever because they weren't big into preservation back then. They just thought of TV as like this nightly disposable thing. But there is some footage that survives, and it's like remarkable to see, and just like an interesting little bit of history. And they got, Harry Belafonte talks to them about it, and it's a really fascinating, like 90-minute, trip through TV history. So that one I thought was just a really interesting one-off, and a thing I, again, like knew nothing about. Like I had no idea that Harry Belafonte ever guest hosted The Tonight Show, let alone for a full week. Yeah, no,
that's actually really cool. I didn't know about that.
There you go.
And I love the idea that they have access to all of these weird little archives. I think you comparing it to like a weird walk through a media museum is pretty interesting, kind of spot on.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, that's an unsung thing about some of these streaming services. Like now that we're getting all these legacy media companies are just launching their own services and like looking for stuff to put on them. CBS All Access has a lot of this too, where there's just like 10 seasons of Perry Mason, like the original black and white Perry Mason. And you're like, you could just stumble on it. And that's like, it's potentially days of entertainment. And some of these shows are like, great, and like you'd be shocked to go back and see like how watchable they are. These, especially now that like Mandalorian is getting everybody back into episodic TV. It's like if you like week to week adventures that are all like kind of a similar format. I've got a treat for you. It's called The 60s.
Yes, there's so much Mandalorian for you to watch.
Literally every show was like Paladin wanders into town, and there's that guy's rustling horses from everybody's ranch. Go get him.
And there's some detractor who's like, I wish they'd stop doing filler episodes.
Well, that's the great thing. Like, Have Gun Will Travel, all those old westerns.
Luke Skywalker.
Yeah, it's like, imagine the episodic week to week, but there's no child or mission, nothing. He's just flying from planet to planet, like getting into scrapes, because that's what he does.
Because that's the deal.
Literally every episode of Have Gun Will Travel opens with Paladin reading a newspaper in a hotel in San Francisco, and then like a bellhop brings him a telegram, and he's like, what? Trouble in Skokie Maloki. I'm on my way. That's it. That's all the lead in you get. And then he shows up.
The glory days.
Yeah, heard you had some trouble with the mine. Yes, we did, Paladin. It's right this way.
That's why we sent you a telegram.
Yeah, that's hence.
Welcome,
right
sir.
Yeah.
Well, let's jump into Apple. Apple TV is one that I've never looked at. So when I talk about this hypothetical person who just got their trial, I might be talking about me. Dig me into Apple. Obviously, like the big thing this year, which I know neither of us have watched yet, is that their Ted Lasso. Which has changed the world.
Ted Lasso.
Everybody
loves it. I have to admit, when people praise a show as very like life affirming and heartwarming. Anytime those are the tweets where it's like, this was exactly the show I needed right now, like bringing me joy during quarantine. I'm such a broken person inside that makes me feel like, oh, I don't want to watch that. I don't want to be inspired. Like when something is like, this gritty urban drama will devastate you, I'm like, yes. Like, yeah. Like otherwise HBO has that show called I May Destroy You, and I was like, hell yeah, can't wait. I mean, that speaks to me. Yeah.
Otherwise, yeah, you're the kid at the indie rock show with their arms crossed in the back, like, yeah, try to move me.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Can't be done. Can't be done.
Screw you, Ted. So right, you should probably watch Ted Lasso. I'm sure I will eventually get over myself and check it out, but that one I have not seen. But there is a lot of good stuff on Apple. I think the weird thing about Apple, it's sort of the anti-Peacock in some ways, because Peacock is this like, take a trip down any one of these categories and like you'll tumble into like, they have that, remember the 80s Dragnet movie with Tom Hanks? That's fun. Check it out on Peacock. Like it's that kind of a library. And Apple is super curated. It's like going into an Apple store where there's like 8 things on sale and they all have their own like custom display. And it's like, see? And like, there really isn't that much selection, but most of the stuff is like pretty good if it's up your alley. The first thing I would say, I think the best show on Apple TV Plus that's coming back in January for season 2 is Servant, that weird M. Night Shyamalan produced like horror thriller thing. Okay. It's sort of almost absurd at this point, very creepy. It's basically a couple in Philadelphia, Lauren Ambrose from 6 Feet Under and Toby Kebbell, who's like from a ton of movies. And
that's a great cast.
In Kong Skull Island. They're a couple, they lost their infant, like in a tragic turn of events that I won't spoil. And basically the mom, Lauren Ambrose, has kind of started to lose it and become very attached to this realistic baby doll that she's sort of, like that's how she's psychologically dealing with the trauma. But then they have a nanny arrive and incredibly strange things start happening with the doll and in the house. And it's, even after a full season, it remains like you're not 100% sure where they're going with this yet. There's like occult stuff. There seems to be a supernatural side, but maybe not. And it's like really psychological horror, like very intense. It's a really good show, and it's very compelling. Like it's one of those shows where the moment an episode ends, you're like, I got to find out what's happening here. Cool. I'm going to keep going. And very atmospheric. Shyamalan did not like write or direct. He directed, I think, a few episodes, but it's this other guy, Tony Bazgalop, I think is his name. But Shyamalan's getting, it's one of those things where Shyamalan put his name on it, so he gets all, people assume it's like he made the whole thing. Yeah. But it does feel like, I get why people would think that. It is in that, I mean, obviously Philadelphia and horror, but it is in that world that
it's like that. It's his wheelhouse.
Yeah, that early Shyamalan, like intriguing mystery, just enough information to keep going, but not, you don't know what's going on around every corner. I love it. I think it's a really good show.
Right on. Is the movie about everyone being blind on your list? Or the show?
See, it's a show. It was not at the top, but it was on there. It is fascinating. It's clearly one of those things where they put so much thought into the world. Like the world building is awesome, and like so much depth and thought put into like a world of blind people and how it would be different. Like just the fight scenes, like they obviously had a whole team of people thinking about what would like a warrior in a world where not only he, but everybody was blind. Like how would that change the way you fight and the way you kill people? So like Momoa's got all these like kill moves that don't require you to see what you're like swinging at, but that would be like max lethal for anyone in your vicinity. And it's like the fact that they thought that out so much is so cool. And visually it's really cool. Like this world that like, cause basically it's a world that we can see, but none of the characters can see. So like, we're the only ones who actually can see what this world is like. They're just, everything for them is arranged by where you could touch it or how you would navigate, or like sound. So everybody's house is filled with like dangling things or things that make sound so you know where you are and you know if somebody's coming in or whatever. And like, that's so cool. It's like worth watching just for that. But they didn't really... Well, there's not equal time spent on here's why you should care about these people as people. Like they're kind of all just... Yeah, they're kind of all just pawns in this really interesting world. And like, I wish that it worked on both levels where like I cared as much about these people and their quest as I did about like, oh, that would be a cool weapon to have in a world full of blind people. But it's mostly the second one.
Got it. Well, what should people watch aside from like a library of Tom Hanks goodness?
Well, the other show that I want to highlight is called Little America. Kumail Nanjiani and Emily Gordon, they like the big sick duo. They produced it. Also, Alan Yang, who worked on Master of None, the Aziz Ansari Netflix show, is also behind this. It is like an anthology. So every episode is its own story. And they're always like comedy drama kinds of stories about recent immigrants to the U.S. And I think that kind of makes it sound like another one of these like, oh, it's life affirming. Thank you for getting me through 2020, Little America. But it's really not. It's very like savvy and funny and clever and insightful. And you like almost all, I think all of the stories are based on features from this magazine. So they're like all kind of rooted in reality. They're all like nonfiction stories that inspired the episodes. And there's an authenticity to these experiences. It doesn't feel like a bunch of writers sitting around a room trying to think up what would be like an early immigrant to America experience. It feels more authentic than that. Like these are real stories that would have come from a real place. And it's charming and delightful. Everything is really well done. And I do like that within, like, they're all kind of funny. They all have a dramatic backbone, but they're very different. There's like a Rocky style inspiring sports one. And then there's like, a really like heartwarming one about, I believe he's a Nigerian immigrant who gets really into American cowboy culture and it helps make him feel more like a part of things. And it's great. Right. And like everyone has their own kind of like take. There's like a coming of age one about, kids from, I believe, China. Just charming and delightful. I breezed through this show.
Well, they all seem so specific that I think it does sound like what you're saying is accurate, where it's like they probably interviewed like one person's grandpa and then like the room probably punched it up a little bit. But yeah, like those sound so like, specific to a person. Like, my grandpa came over, he got obsessed with cowboys. It was wild. Yeah.
Right. And then there's one about like a young man from India and his parents because of an immigration staff who have to like return. And so he ends up sort of raising himself while in contact with them. And it's like, it's not a huge story. It's not a thing you would like pitch as like, let's make this an episode of TV, but it just comes from such a real place and it's rooted in such real human drama that it's just very compelling. And they're all beautifully acted. It's a really terrific show. It kind of got buried because it's on this nascent platform that not a lot of people have seen. I got two more. You want to do two more from Apple? I'll go quick. The Beastie Boys story, or I think it might just be called Beastie Boys story. This was, I don't know, maybe you have to like the Beastie Boys as I do. It's like a recording of two of the three, because obviously MCA no longer with us. Mm-hmm. So it's Mike D and Ad Rock, and they're kind of hosting this big show. It's like a stage show where they walk the audience through the history of the Beastie Boys from their perspective, but it's also kind of like stand up, like they're joking around. It's very like it's scripted in some ways, and they're showing footage and clips and archival material, and so it's a recording of this stage show. But it's like the best way possible to get a history of this group, and like it's very personal.
I think the last Beastie Boys media I saw was the concert tour they did where they just handed cameras out to the audience.
Yeah. I shot that. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very, it's fascinating. You're getting this very insider version of the story. And if you care about the band at all, obviously it's vital. But even if you don't, I think it's just an interesting, like, up and down musical here's what the early hip hop scene was like from this odd perspective of these three, Jewish guys who sort of inserted themselves in that world.
Yeah. Right on.
Loved that. And then the last one, there is a Werner Herzog original documentary that went up on Apple TV Plus a few weeks ago that is not being talked about. It's called Fireball: Visitors from Other Worlds. If you ever saw Into the Inferno, it's another documentary that Herzog made with the same guy, a scientist named Oppenheimer. That one was about let's go and look at inside a volcano and what's going on in a volcano. And this one is basically the same thing, but meteors, like meteors and meteorites, like what's going on with them and like a kind of the history of humans encountering them. And here's how we find them. And here's why they're interesting for us to study. And just kind of everything they could think to take in about meteorology and meteor science, not meteorology, that's weather, but the study of meteors and astronomy. Fascinating. And it's like, what?
Through the Herzog lens.
Right. Yeah. And so it's like Oppenheimer's on camera, like talking through the science and meeting scientists and explaining things. And then you get like wandering around this desolate landscape looking for the meteors. I am reminded of the fruitlessness of human life. You get that. You get that back and forth. Perfect. It's really good. Yeah.
Perfect. Those are solid.
Why do we search for the meteors from above?
As we scroll through the Apple television service,
yours sounds a little. Everybody's Herzog is different. Yours sounds a little Russian. I don't know where
mine just went.
Mine sounds like a European Triumph the Instant Comic Dog. Like, yes, the documentary.
Mine sounded like Nick Kroll doing a European character on Big Mouth.
Yeah,
I don't know what mine was.
Did you see? Oh, well, a little digression. There's a guy on Twitter who did here's the Big Mouth table read, behind the scenes. And his Nick Kroll voice is perfect. And it's just like, so what? It's like some guy's genitals start talking. And then Nick Kroll's like, I bet they sound like this.
That's, man, let's not digress too much, but I think we could do a whole Big Mouth show.
Definitely.
Just on the fact that I can't think of a bigger Hall of Fame television cast.
Oh my God! Everybody
really trying to. Anyway, sorry. We'll keep going. We can talk about.
That'll be a different episode. We're talking about Big Mouth.
That might be maybe a best of 2020 kind of thing or something like that. Okay, so two down, maybe. Let's talk a little Hulu.
Let's chat Hulu.
Let's talk about Disney Plus's forgotten step sibling. Who got the weird Harry Potter room at Disney's house. And
I do have to say, this was a great year, though, for Hulu. I think mostly because of FX. Agreed. Now all FX shows live on Hulu and go to Hulu the day after they're on FX. Was so so much more good stuff is on Hulu this year because of that. Devs and Fargo obviously were both big things. Or Mrs. America, a bunch of stuff we'll talk about. But really has made Hulu a lot better than just here's where Fox shows go to die after we air them on television.
But I'll kick off with Fargo. That's in my opinion, if you're going to do the Hulu trial, Fargo's your first stop.
Yes.
As far as
don't start with the new season. Go back.
Go back.
Season 2 of Fargo is amazing. My favorite is still season 2.
That's which one is that? That's
Kirsten Dunst, Jesse Plemons.
Yeah, that was
3 was Ewan McGregor, and then 4 the new one was
the brothers.
Yeah.
I just every season is such a weird, fascinating crime show. They all hit a little different, and they all feel a little different, but they're all still unified by that weird love child of Cohen and Noah Hawley, which is, that's such a winning pitch. Noah Hawley doing a love letter to the Cohen brothers. Come on, just a fantastic show. So that would be my rec.
Yeah, season 4 was a real parabola. I kind of wasn't that into it as it started, and then I loved the middle episodes. And then you could tell that the pandemic kind of cut some of the plans short. It felt a little abbreviated at the end. season 2 and 3 of Fargo are absolutely stellar. Like about as good as it's that perfect balance that the Coens get in the original movie between it's gritty and dark and violent and satisfying in that way as this bleak crime story, but also weirdly humane and funny with a real humanist streak. And it really gets to know these characters and delves into their interior lives. That's so hard to do. So many shows try to do it. And Fargo, when it's good, Fargo just hits that middle ground perfectly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But beyond Fargo, what do you got? What should people be checking out on the Hulu?
I mean, I have definitely praised this wildly on an SJU show before, so we could get through it quickly. But Palm Springs, that Andy Samberg, Christine Milioti, Maloney.
I think so.
I don't.
Yeah,
I'm saying I'm mixing up 4 famous people's names in one.
Also, I've made you say the names of a lot of things this morning, so if you miss one, everyone should forgive you.
Kristen Milioti.
Kristen Milioti. There we go. It's the time loop thing. We did obviously Groundhog Day, the granddaddy of them. We got had the Happy Death Day movie. It's been done to come up with such a beautifully original way to explore it, and such an interesting, fresh take. Really unexpectedly delightful. It's still one of my favorite movies of this whole year. So that hugely recommended.
Definitely ranks up.
I also really love Devs, that Alex Garland FX limited series with Nick Offerman from earlier this year. Do you remember?
You were a big Devs guy. You know what? For some reason, I don't. Sometimes I just got to be in the mood, and I just wasn't. I don't know why. It was one of those things where it's I recognize that this is good. I just don't want to watch it right now. I don't
It definitely takes its time and sort of here's what the bit is. You got to give it a few episodes before it lets you know what kind of, you're in a sci-fi world, but then it takes its time to get to what sci-fi world you're in. But then it does the Alex Garland thing that's so great, where it's takes this wacky sci-fi premise and then really forces you to think about it from a bunch of different perspectives and really grapple with it rather than just raising it, and in the same way that Ex Machina isn't just AI would be weird, right? That would be crazy to be talking to a robot who could talk to you. It's really all the ways in which it would be crazy and how a robot might manipulate you and vice versa and all that stuff. And this is kind of that same thing, and I won't spoil what it's about, but about the thing that it's about.
Yeah. No, yeah, that and just getting to watch Nick Offerman in such an interesting kind of new role for him when we're at this point very used to the woodworking canoe guy.
Right. Nothing. Yeah. Could not be a bigger leap from Ron Swanson into this new role, which is nice to see. Another FX miniseries I really liked on Hulu this year was Mrs. America, which I mentioned briefly. That was the Cate Blanchett, Phyllis Schlafly, basically about the history of the feminist, the women's rights movement of the 70s, but from the perspective of a very conservative woman who was against the Equal Rights Amendment, as opposed to one of the many people that we know who was sort of pro it.
Right.
Huge, amazing ensemble cast that one. I mean, obviously it was led by Cate Blanchett. You get character actress Margot Martindale in there, but Rose Byrne, Uzo Aduba, Elizabeth Banks, Melanie Linsky, John Slattery, G. Triplehorn, Tracy Ullman, Sarah Paulson. Come on. Yeah. Come on.
Come on, you.
What are you doing? Definitely worth checking out just for that incredible lineup. And they're all playing, Rose Byrne's playing Gloria Steinem. And, they're all playing notable historical figures, which is always fun.
I think another good comedy option to check out, if people are going to start trying to explore Deep Dive Hulu a little more. It's a show we've talked about a few times on SJU. Spencer sings its praises all the time. Pen 15.
Love Pen 15, yes. Brilliant.
Pen 15, you'd think should die as just like a gimmick, if that makes sense. Okay, I get it. It's adults playing 8th graders and everyone else is played by an actual 8th grader. Sure, okay. But they they play it with such sincerity. Like, you forget about the gimmick. They absolutely disappear into the two lead characters, and the show
to the point that
funny.
When I see those actresses in other things playing their own age, it's weird and unsettling.
Very weird. Yeah, I went and saw it recently. I was like, "What the hell?"
You are an 8th.
Yeah, I saw Maya Erskine in something else, and I was like, "No, you're 13. What are you doing?"
Yeah, well, she did that rom-com. She did that.
Right. Yes.
We're going to the marriages rom-com, and I was like, "You should not go to these weddings with a child."
Yeah, Man Seeking Women, I think, was what a lot of people saw.
Yes, exactly.
But that one's fantastic. Season 1, very funny. Season 2 was actually kind of challenging because I think maybe it's just because of the year we're in. I was like, I can't wait to revisit the wacky romp that is Pen 15. And Season 2 is just like, no, we're less interested in making you laugh, and we're going to kind of actually just take out your heart a little bit and just like pull pieces off of it.
I mean, I think that's what works about it. I think it's just like you're saying, if it was just the goofy sketch comedy side, we'd already be bored with it. But the fact that it's such an impactful show, it reminds me of like 8th grade. 8th grade is playing it more straight by having an actual age appropriate lead. But in that same way, it's not just goofing on or presenting like a cartoon version of Junior High. It's really about the trauma and the heartache and the brutality of going to junior high and being an adolescent. And it's surprisingly like powerful.
Yeah.
This is weird.
Another cameo on Big Mouth. Hey, bringing it back to Big Mouth.
Hey!
Another
I'm a part of you. I'm a sex organ.
Sorry. It's another show that the pandemic also cuts short the production in that shows at the end of season 2. And from what I've heard from some people who were around the show that they kind of were saying the same thing. Like, the plan was to do more and it got cut off. So the finale might feel a little bit like a mid-season finale, but it's still very satisfying in its way.
Yeah.
Insight from Hollywood O'Toole here. Look at that.
Oh yeah.
Everyone's been in a UCB class at some point.
While we're on comedy on Hulu, did you get to check out Solar Opposites this year, Joe?
I haven't watched it. No.
This is Mike McMahon, who was he's a Rick and Morty writer, producer. He's also the guy that did Star Trek Lower Decks, which we'd be talking about if this was the CBS All Access special, but it's not. He did this show that's very much, if you're a Rick and Morty fan, Solar Opposites, very much in a Rick and Morty vein. It is about a group of aliens that left their home, it's basically Krypton, like this alien world got destroyed. And a whole bunch of teams from that world went to different unpopulated planets to try to terraform them and turn them into a new homeworld. But these idiot aliens accidentally ended up on Earth, only to discover that it's already populated by these jerk humans. And then they just decide to blend into middle America society while they rebuild their spaceship.
Okay.
That exact same Rick and Morty sci-fi absurd Adult Swim kind of sensibility. Okay. Tons of great, Thomas Middleditch is one of the main cast. Justin Roiland doing some voices for this one as well. And then great celebrity guests and cameos. Andy Daly has a big role in this one.
That's great.
Yeah,
you know what? I misjudged.
It's a lot of fun.
I misjudged it. I have a blind spot and a tendency to misjudge a lot of animation. I'll read the book by its cover and just if I see something, and this one fell into that category. In my head, I just file it under, Fox is adding another half hour to the Family Guy, American Dad,
right.
And I just kind of go, you know what? I don't need another one. I'm good. I don't know. It's just the way my brain processes.
I'll give you the one tip I can give you of Solar Opposite sensibility is one of the bits is that the younger aliens who go to school are posing as the kid, because it's very much like Third Rock from the Sun. I will caution you. The setup is almost identical. Uh-huh. The two alien kids who go to school, they have a miniaturization gun that they randomly zap people with and shrink them down. And then they have this ant farm in their wall that's just like a human farm, and then everybody that they miniaturize, they just drop them in there. And that's a funny bit, but the show takes it to this next level of there are whole episodes set in the human ant farm among the people who get dropped in there, where it's become like an Escape from New York style dystopian society. And Alfred Molina is like the Duke who like runs the human ant farm. And like, that's the level we're on. We're like, they're putting a lot of like cleverness and thought. It's not just a goofy sci-fi cartoon.
Okay, that sounds great. I misjudged that. That's a good stuff for me.
I recommend that one a lot. I enjoyed it.
Perfect. Do we have it?
And also, Bob's Burgers is on Hulu. Another great animated comedy.
Yeah, one of the old times. One of the old timers. Do you have any other picks for Hulu? I think Shrill is always worth checking out. I think
I haven't seen Shrill.
It's very good. I think we're gonna look back when we're in our 80s, Lon, and we're gonna say that Aidy Bryant was probably one of the best performers of her era. Like she's just a really funny woman, like and just a solid actress all around. I definitely think the season of SNL is hurting without her. Like I definitely feel like she is clearly missing from that cast right now because she's working on her own stuff. But yeah, I think absolutely worth watching and worth checking out.
There you go. I'm looking around if I have any more. I think that might be it. I recently watched that 6ix9ine, that Takeshi 6ix9ine documentary over there, and I was thinking maybe I would recommend that to you, but honestly, I'm not sure I'm going to. It seems like it kind of ends up and you're like, why did I just watch that? It was kind of entertaining, but I'm not sure I need to know that guy's story.
Well, I think of all of these, Lon, if we can wrap up like this. I have the resources to do the free trial of one of these services. And based on, these recs and stuff like that, what would you recommend people go with?
I mean, look, I think there's different things to recommend all three of these. So it really depends on where you're coming from. If you're looking for original content, like I want a place that's going to give me a lot of exclusive shows that I can't see anywhere else, most of which are going to be of a pretty consistent level of quality. I think you probably want Apple TV Plus. It's got the most originals that are of a pretty consistent level of quality of all three of these platforms. And a lot of them are quite good. Servant, I think, is really good. Little America, I think, is really good. I think Dickinson with Haley Steinfeld, pretty good. They had this original documentary, Boy State, that I thought was good. This Herzog film. I think Hulu also has a lot of good, solid originals. They had Little Fires Everywhere also this year, that limited series, which was pretty good. And Hulu's kind of the balance because in addition to their own stuff, they have a lot of stuff that comes in, like if you want to see The Voice or The Masked Singer or some of these other things that are popping up. If you do like those, 911, Lone Star kinds of shows, procedurals from networks or whatever, like a lot of that stuff ends up on Hulu. So it's got this big library that Apple doesn't have. Like that's really what's holding Apple back is that they don't have the archive. You're watching one of the new things they made just for you, or you're out of luck. Hope you like Ted Lasso because there's not that much on there. Hulu's got a lot more stuff, but it doesn't have the consistent quality. Peacock right now, not so great for original stuff. It's really the library. If you want to go back and watch a lot of old sitcoms, they have a great film library too. We didn't really delve into it, but there's just a lot of good movies on Peacock. You can just surf through Peacock.
Right.
Like HBO Max has this too, where they've just got, they've got a bunch of the Universal library and it's just there. But the one thing about Peacock I would say also is if you're curious about it, you can check it out with ads for free. So you can't see everything that's on Peacock, but it's a good way to like at least jump in, take a look at what's around, see what you think. And if there's a lot that's intriguing to you there, you could then sign up. Whereas Apple and Hulu are both like walled garden. Like,
or if Grandma buys you an iPod Shuffle this year for Christmas, maybe it might come with a free month of Apple TV.
It might.
It just might, guys. Hey, dude, thank you so much for walking me through this stuff today. Where can people tell people about the Binge Boys?
Binge Boys is my podcast with Hal Rudnick. It's basically this. You've now just heard a sample episode, except if it was Joe Starr instead of Hal Rudnick.
And sir, I am no Hal Rudnick.
Doing fewer characters, I will say. It's been me and Joe the whole time, where there hasn't been any old gentlemen stopping by or robots. That's really the primary difference between this and
Lon, what should I watch on Hulu?
Yeah, a lot of that. We do that every week. We just screamed at each other about Mank for, I would say, a full 30 minutes yesterday. So you can find that on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you download your podcasts.
Dude,
so much Mank yelling. Too much.
So much Mank yelling. You guys need that Mank yelling. You need a little Hal Rudnick in your life. Make sure you subscribe to the Binge Boys. Also, make sure you rate and review those Binge Boys. And we hope you guys are safe. We hope you're getting through the holidays okay. And we'll see you on the next SJU. Bye, guys.